You smile, you nod, you agree. Even when your gut twists in protest, you stay quiet. Because it's easier that way. Easier to keep the peace. Easier to be liked. But every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you silence your thoughts to avoid offending, a small part of you dies, not all at once. Slowly, quietly, invisibly. It's a death by 1,000 smiles. You weren't born to disappear. Yet somehow you've mastered the art of vanishing. Into roles, into relationships, into expectations. You're not living, you're performing. And the world loves your performance. It claps when you're agreeable. It rewards you for fitting in. It praises you for being easy to work with, easy to talk to, easy to control. But there's a cost no one talks about, because behind every people-pleaser is a graveyard of abandoned desires, repressed truths and suffocated boundaries. You've been taught that kindness means compliance, that love must be earned, that saying no is selfish. So you bent, you smiled, you obeyed, until the day. You forgot what your real face even looked like. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. A mask polished by praise and perfected by fear. But here's the truth. The more you perfect the mask, the more you lose the face beneath it. The more you're liked, the less you're known. The more you blend in, the less you belong. And the more you please others, the more you betray yourself. This isn't kindness, it's self-erasure, and it's rewarded. Every system around you, school, work, family, benefits from your silence, from your obedience, from your disappearance. But what do you gain? You feel anxious around conflict, guilty when you rest, empty in crowds. You wonder why you're tired all the time, why you're constantly apologizing, why you feel invisible, even to the people closest to you. It's because you're living everyone's life but your own. People-pleasing isn't about kindness. It's about survival. It's a desperate attempt to stay safe in a world that taught you. You must be nice to be loved. You must be useful to matter. You must be silent to belong. But what if this isn't just emotional exhaustion? What if it's something darker? What if people-pleasing is the slowest form of suicide? Not of the body, but of the self. Because when you live only for others, you become a ghost inside your own life. And here's the cruel irony. You think pleasing others will make them love you. But they can't love what's not real. The approval you chase is for a version of you that doesn't even exist. And deep down you know it. That's why it never feels enough. No matter how much you give, no matter how much you sacrifice, you still feel unseen, unheard, unloved, because it's not you they're loving. It's the mask. And the mask is slowly killing you. So now the question isn't, how do I please others more? It's, who am I when I stop? Carl Jung believed every human being wears a mask. He called it the persona, the version of ourselves we carefully craft to meet the expectations of society. It's not a lie, but it's not the whole truth either. It's a compromise, a performance. The kind friend, the obedient child, the hard-working employee, the agreeable partner. We wear these identities not just to be accepted, but to survive. From childhood we learn quickly. Anger makes people uncomfortable. Sadness is weakness. Authenticity is dangerous. So we hide. We trim ourselves down. We mold our personalities to fit the room, and each time we do, a piece of us gets pushed into the basement of our psyche. Jung called this the shadow. Everything you suppress, everything you deny, everything you fear, others will reject. It's your real opinions, your rage, your lust, your envy, your truth, the parts of you that don't fit the image you show the world. The persona is the mask you show others. The shadow is everything it hides. And here's the terrifying part. The more you identify with your persona, the more disconnected you become from your shadow. You become trapped in a character, a shell, a smiling stranger, and the longer you wear the mask, the more you start to forget it's even a mask. You say, I'm just a nice person. But are you? Or is it that your anger was punished so often, You buried it. Is your kindness real, or is it just a tool to avoid conflict? To be liked, to stay safe? Most people don't want to face this, because meeting your shadow feels like meeting a monster. It shakes the ground beneath your identity. But Jung warned, if you don't make the shadow conscious, it will rule your life from the dark. This is how people become passive-aggressive, explosive, manipulative, emotionally numb. It's not because they're evil, it's because they're wearing a mask, while being haunted by everything they've hidden. And here's where it gets dangerous for the people-pleaser. When you live entirely in the persona, when you convince yourself that you're nothing but sweet, kind, and selfless, you start projecting your shadow onto others. You hate selfish people because deep down you've denied your own needs for years. You resent those who set boundaries because you've never dared to set your own. You admire confidence but punish yourself for wanting the same. This is the war inside you, the persona versus the shadow, the mask you wear, versus the truth you've buried. And here's the brutal reality. The more you please others, the more the shadow grows in silence. You become anxious without knowing why, irritable at random, disconnected from your desires. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the eyes staring back because you've lost access to your fire, your rawness, your humanity. You've traded truth for approval. And what you get in return is a life that looks perfect on the outside, but feels hollow within. But there's a way out, and it doesn't begin with being more liked. It begins with being more honest about what you feel, what you need, what you want, and what you're no longer willing to suppress to make others comfortable. To escape the mask, you must be willing to meet your shadow, not to fight it, but to listen, because the shadow isn't here to destroy you. It's here to complete you. No child is born a people pleaser. Children are loud, honest, unfiltered. They cry when they're upset. They demand when they're hungry. They scream when they're hurt. They don't apologize for existing until someone teaches them to. So ask yourself, where did you first learn that your emotions were too much? That being accepted meant being agreeable? That love had to be earned? For many, the roots of people-pleasing don't begin in adulthood. They begin in the living room, in the classroom, in the silence after being scolded, in the praise after staying quiet. You were trained. Maybe your parents only showed warmth when you were good. Maybe they withdrew when you showed anger. Maybe they exploded when you made a mistake. Maybe they smiled at you in public, but used shame to control you in private. So you adapted. You learned to anticipate needs, to avoid conflict, to be hyper-aware of moods, tones, silences. You became a mind reader, a fixer, a caretaker, not because you were kind, but because it was safer to be useful than to be real. This is how trauma hides in plain sight, not just in what happened, but in what you had to become in response. A child shouldn't have to manage adult emotions, but many did. Many still do. They became the easy kid, the golden child, the peacemaker, the quiet one, and society praised them for it. Teachers loved them, family relied on them, friends leaned on them, but no one ever asked, who comforts the one who comforts everyone else? This is how survival becomes identity, and now as an adult you still carry that child inside you, the one who believes that being loved means being useful, that your worth is measured by how little you ask for and how much you give. You overextend. In relationships, you say yes when you want to scream no. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You feel guilty for resting. You feel afraid of taking up space. Because deep down, love still feels conditional. Safety still feels earned. You don't trust that just being you is enough. And every time someone praises your kindness, your helpfulness, your selflessness, it doesn't feel like validation. It feels like confirmation of your role. You're playing a part you didn't choose, but don't know how to leave. And here's what no one tells you. The people who conditioned you this way often didn't do it out of malice. They did it because someone did it to them. It's generational, cultural, invisible. Entire families have been built on quiet suffering. entire lives shaped by the fear of disapproval, entire identities formed around being the good one. But being good isn't the same as being whole. You are not here to be a function. You are not here to fulfill other people's expectations. You are not here to vanish behind politeness and performance. You were not born to please. You were born to live. And that begins with unlearning what you were praised for as a child and questioning who you had to become to survive. The people pleaser is not who you are. It's who you became when love felt uncertain and unsafe. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering who you were before the world taught you to perform, and that version of you, the unfiltered, unapologetic, alive version, is still in there, waiting. Niceness has a price, and it's almost always paid in silence. Most people pleasers don't collapse from a single betrayal. They burn out from 1,000 tiny self-abandonments. You say yes when you're tired. You smile when you're angry. You help when you're already drowning. You tell people it's fine. When your soul is quietly screaming, no, it's not. On the surface, you look calm, composed, capable. But underneath, you're keeping score. Every unspoken need, every ignored boundary, every time someone took too much and you said nothing. That's how resentment grows, not as rage, but as exhaustion. You give and give and give, until you don't know who you're giving to anymore, until your kindness stops feeling like a virtue and starts feeling like a prison. You become tired of being the one who always bends, the one who carries the emotional weight, the one who makes sure everyone else is okay, while silently falling apart. And then you wonder, why does no one show up for me the way I show up for them? But here's the truth. They don't even know what you need, because you never told them. You were too busy keeping the peace, too busy earning approval, too busy being nice. So your life fills up with one-sided relationships. People who love your silence, your compliance, your availability, but rarely your truth, rarely your boundaries, rarely your no. You end up surrounded by people who benefit from your emotional debt, but never help repay it. And one day it hits you. You're not being nice. You're being afraid. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid that if you stop giving, people will stop staying. So you keep the mask on. You perform. You serve, and your soul becomes quieter, until the only voice left is the echo of everyone else's expectations. This is not what Jung meant by individuation. This is not selfhood. This is self-erasure. And here's what's worse. Even your body starts to revolt. The burnout. The chronic fatigue. The tightness in your chest. The anxiety you can't explain. It's all your nervous system screaming, I can't keep pretending. Because pretending is exhausting. And people-pleasing isn't free. It costs you your energy, your clarity, your dignity, your truth. You end up living a life that pleases everyone, except the person living it. You can't say what you really feel. You can't ask for what you truly need. You can't even rest without guilt. And that's the moment many people finally wake up. Not because they want to, but because they have no choice. They're tired, empty, invisible in their own story, and they realize niceness was never love. Compliance was never peace. Pleasing everyone was never a sign of goodness. It was a symptom of fear. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But the cost of avoidance is steep. It's your authenticity, your aliveness, your power. So the question is no longer, how can I be liked? The question is, how much of myself am I willing to lose to be accepted by people who don't even know who I really am? Because that's the real cost of being nice, not just burnout, but becoming a stranger to your own truth. The world doesn't just tolerate people pleasers, it rewards them. Be agreeable, and you're seen as mature. Stay quiet, and you're called respectful. Put others first, and you're labeled a good person. Sacrifice your needs, and they'll say you're selfless. But here's what no one tells you. These aren't compliments, they're chains. Society has a sick obsession with obedience, especially when it looks like kindness. Your self-sacrifice makes you easy to manage. Your silence makes you easy to ignore. Your constant yes makes you perfect for exploitation. Governments, corporations, institutions, they don't want awakened individuals. They want compliant workers, predictable consumers, reliable machines who don't complain. So they build a culture that praises burnout, that glamorizes overgiving, that turns emotional labor into moral virtue. You're not tired. You're a hard worker. You're not anxious. You're ambitious. You're not neglected. You're independent. And if you collapse under the weight of it all, you're told to practice self-care, then get back to work. This is not compassion. This is manipulation. Carl Jung warned that when a society rewards conformity, it punishes authenticity. And that's exactly what's happening. Show anger, and you're difficult. Set a boundary, and you're selfish. Say no, and you're ungrateful. Speak your truth, and you're too much. So what do? We shrink. We smile. We swallow our words. Not because it feels good, but because it's safer than being called a problem. And over time, this reward system gets internalized. You start policing yourself. You guilt yourself for saying no. You shame yourself for wanting more. You become your own captor, enforcing the same expectations that once oppressed you. And the world claps. Because a person who doubts themselves is easier to control than a person who knows their worth. You were trained to play small, not just by family, but by an entire system that benefits when you forget your power. And if you ever try to break free, to assert yourself, to live unapologetically, the world will turn on you because your awakening is dangerous. It threatens the balance of a sick system built on silence. It forces people to confront the roles they play in their own oppression. That's why reclaiming yourself feels so hard, because it's not just personal healing, it's social rebellion. So ask yourself, who benefits from your guilt? Who profits from your self-doubt? Who stays comfortable when you stay small? And then ask, why do you keep calling your silence kindness? Because the truth is brutal but necessary. In a world built to exploit the agreeable, being nice can be a form of self-destruction. So no, you're not crazy for feeling angry. You're not broken for feeling exhausted. You're not wrong for wanting more. You're just finally waking up. There comes a point where you stop asking, how do I make them like me? And start asking, what would it cost me to keep pretending? This is where your real life begins. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not admired, not endlessly agreeable, whole. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot become whole without making someone uncomfortable. You cannot heal without first breaking a few roles. You cannot be real and be universally liked at the same time. So the path forward isn't about fixing your niceness. It's about facing your fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the fear that you're only lovable when you're useful, because beneath every people-pleaser is a terrified child. One who learned early on that love must be earned, that anger is dangerous, that being good is the only way to stay safe. But you are not that child anymore. And the world is not your parent. You no longer owe anyone a version of yourself that hurts to maintain. Individuation is not a soft awakening. It's a rebellion. You start saying no, not to be cruel, but because you finally matter to yourself. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop dimming your truth to keep others comfortable. You stop sacrificing your needs at the altar of being nice. And slowly, the mask begins to fall off. You confront the parts of you you've buried, your anger, your grief, your selfishness. Your voice, the very parts you were taught to fear, turn out to be the missing pieces of your wholeness, because boundaries are not barriers, they are declarations. I exist. I matter. I will not disappear to be loved. But don't expect applause. The moment you stop playing the role, the audience gets uncomfortable. Some will call you selfish, others will say you've changed. And they're right. You have. You've stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You've stopped mistaking loyalty for self-abandonment. You've stopped measuring your worth by how useful you are to others, and in the quiet that follows, you hear something you haven't heard in years. Your own voice. Not the one that pleads or performs, but the one that knows who you are, knows what you need, knows that being disliked is not death. But self-betrayal is. This is what real power feels like. Not dominance, not control, but the quiet strength of a person who no longer needs to be approved to exist. Jung believed that individuation was the only path to true freedom. The integration of your shadow, your light, your rage, your love, your chaos, and your calm. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to perform. And yes, this path is hard. It requires you to lose things, relationships, roles, certainties. But what you gain in return is something most people never find: yourself. So if you're tired of being the nice one, if you're sick of smiling through the ache, if you're done trading authenticity for acceptance, then good. Let it break. Let it all fall apart. Because on the other side of pleasing is peace. Not the peace that comes from keeping others happy, but the peace that comes from finally coming home to who you really are. And once you taste that, you'll never trade yourself for approval again. In a world that rewards your silence, choosing to speak is an act of rebellion. In a culture that praises your self-sacrifice, choosing to set a boundary is seen as a threat. And in a system built to benefit from your compliance, choosing to be yourself is the greatest revolt of all. You were never broken for being kind, but you were lied to, told that love must be earned through obedience, that respect comes from being agreeable, that safety is found in staying small, but the truth is simpler and more dangerous. You are allowed to exist exactly as you are. You are allowed to disappoint people, to say no to change, to choose peace over performance, because there is nothing noble about becoming a ghost in your own life. Carl Jung didn't teach people how to be liked. He taught them how to become whole. And wholeness requires you to confront everything you were told to suppress: your fire, your fear, your freedom. This isn't just psychology, it's spiritual war, the battle between the false self you created to survive and the real self that's been buried underneath, waiting patiently for the day you'd stop apologizing for being alive. So if today is the day you choose yourself, if today is the day you stop asking for permission to be real, then welcome. You've just begun the most important revolution there is. Not out there, but in here. If this message stirred something in you, if you've ever felt trapped by your own kindness or haunted by the need to be liked, know this: you are not alone. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's tired of pretending, tired of pleasing, tired of being everything for everyone but nothing for themselves. And if you want more ideas like this, raw, psychological, and soul deep, subscribe. Not to follow, but to remember who the hell you were before the world told you to forget.